G'day, Michael here. I've had my first successful print of the Black Widow in about a week now. The problems I was confronted in my last video that I showed this have pretty much been resolved. I've put a bit of effort into the whole machine. I've taken it out, pulled it apart, and done a few modifications that actually put some future back into this printer. Now, initially the machine was designed for a 250mm platen. I've managed to bump that out to 420mm. I'll explain how I did that in a minute. And the hot end, which kept jamming, it was a typical thing with the Teflon liner of the heat break getting overheated and distorted, deforming. I've usually been able to get about 6 or 7 kilos through one of these hot ends before I had to service them, and I find that too short a service interval. So I actually changed the design of this component. I also have 4 bearings on the x-axis now, two below and 2 high, so it's become a lot firmer. What else have I done? Yeah, so that's firmer. I swapped out the bottom V-slot pulleys with these harder clear Delrin ones, and they run more efficiently at the higher pressure to give me more rigid action without anywhere near as much drag. It's quite surprising how much difference there is. They're also slightly bigger diameter, so that may also help with the efficiency of them rolling. Alright, now how did I get the extra depth? This Y motor, I've printed this black component here. It mounts the motor below that top surface line of that V-slot rail. So the motor, it used to be mounted vertically upside down the other way on top. Now that meant that it used up a certain amount of the length of the travel. By putting this below, I've increased the length of the travel pretty much the full length of this rail, and that's given me 420mm of travel. Now the platen was 250 for the hotbed. I've got a slab on top there that's 300 wide. So with this current plate I could print 300mm area. I'll have to get a different heater to bump that up to 400 and maybe 420mm in length in future. The other thing I'll have to do is increase the size. Whoops, can I fit in here? Increase the size of my enclosure. There's a lot of junk here while I'm working on everything. There's bits and pieces pulled apart everywhere, so forgive the mess. But in any case, I've had to cut that little hole in the back. That's going to buy me just enough millimeters so that I can use the 300mm platen fully with the doors closed. To get the 400mm, I'll actually have to make a completely new enclosure, but that I'm leaving for another day. My main aim is to get this thing up and running so I can continue producing parts for my 2 Core XY printers that I'm developing. Because basically everything's halted on the Core XY until I get this thing going again. But anyhow, now that's going again. I'll explain a little bit what I've done in the hot end to extend its life. This is the typical hot end that's like it's basically the same as what's in there. It's caught. Alright. Now, you've got the heat break. Now the real heat break of this whole thing is that little cut. Let me just grab, I've got quite a few different designs here. Here's 2 others. We have, those little cuts there mean there's a reduced amount of metal to conduct heat up. Now here you can see the problem. That Teflon comes right down into the bottom, and so that Teflon gets heated to the temperature of the hot end, because that's down inside the hot bit. So if that's running at 260 degrees or thereabouts, it really is shortening the life of the Teflon. If you could keep the hot end to around 200, I think the Teflon would last a lot longer. But I'm using PETG, and to get any performance out of it, I seem to like the temperature at about 250, 260 degrees to get some speed out of the printer. Okay, so there's a couple of different designs, but what I've done inside the machine here is I've jimmied things up in such a way that the Teflon ceases at that line. So the Teflon's not actually on the very hot part of the heat break. It stops at that line. So I'm hoping that's really going to bump up the lifespan of the Teflon. but it is a little bit touchy. If I have it too far back into the cold zone, then the filament will catch on the stainless steel part of it rather than being kept free on the Teflon. Well, I guess that's it from me. Feel free to like, share, subscribe, ask a question, leave a comment. Bye for now.